in factored form. That is how we wanted. Do not waste your time in changing the denominator. You do need to simplify, expand and simplify the numerator. Okay, and we have plus x plus 10. Very simple, easy stuff. Now you just simplify the top. X squared, collect common terms, so x squared minus 2x plus 4x plus x. That's going to be 3x plus 3x. And minus 8 plus 10, that's going to be plus 2. All over x plus 4, x plus 2. At this step, you do need to factor the numerator. After you've simplified the two fractions, now you take a look at it. Well, okay, can I factor this again? Well, can I factor this? Two numbers add up to 3, and the same two numbers multiply to 2. The answer is yes, I can factor this. 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 times 2 is 2. So the numerator factors into 1x plus 1, x plus 2, over x plus 4, x plus 2. And the reason why you factor the numerator is to realize that there's an actual common factor. And the whole thing just simplifies to x plus 1 or x plus 4. And that is the final answer. And we're not done yet. We always need to state restrictions. And we do not state restriction at the final step, because if that were the case, we'd only say x cannot equal negative 4, and that's not true at all. We know that there's many values that x cannot take. So let's take a look at that second step here. X plus 4, so x cannot equal negative 4. X plus 2, so x cannot equal negative 2. X plus 2 again, so that doesn't change. And x plus 4 again. So in this example, there were only 2 restrictions. So yeah, that's the answer. Any questions? All right, so that was an example of addition. Now we're going to do an example of subtraction. Same procedure where we need to make a common denominator. Let's take a look at the denominator, shall we? They look kind of the same. Question is, are they the same? Well, one's 5 minus 2a, one's 2a minus 5. Why don't we rearrange this first one? Now the minus sign is attached to 2a, so don't forget to write that correctly. So this becomes minus 2a, and there's no symbol in front of 5, but we know it's a positive number, so it's got to be plus 5. Now that they've been written kind of in the same order, with the variable term, initially written, and then the constant term, after. So, are they the same? Well, not quite. The first fraction has a negative symbol on the 2a, and a positive symbol, in front of the 5. Whereas the second fraction has the opposite. It's positive on 2a and negative on 5. So when you have a case like this, you can factor out a common term or common value, and that common value is negative 1. I'm going to factor out a negative 1. You're going to see what that does to this equation. Remember, factoring out means you're essentially dividing by that value, in this case negative 1, and then placing that value in front, putting everything else in a bracket. So if I factor out a -1, essentially divide everything by -1, this becomes -1 on the outside and brackets -2a plus 5. Because dividing by -1 just changes the sign. That's essentially what -1 does. Just changes the sign. So now, this was the second fraction here, denominator of the second fraction. And now this looks exactly like this. But we have a -1 here. Well, the cool thing about -1 is we can just multiply the top by -1. What do I mean by that? Well, here, this becomes a plus 1, -2a, plus 5, negative a minus 4 over -1, -2a plus 5. This -1, I can multiply both the top and bottom by -1, and because I'm doing the same thing to the top and bottom, I'm not changing the value of the fraction. The -1 will multiply it and give you a +1. And remember, anything times +1 is just nothing. And this -1 will then just multiply with the numerator. We don't really care if the numerator changes because we're looking for a common denominator. The numerator can be whatever. So now this whole thing becomes a plus 1 or -2a plus 5 minus -1 times a minus 4 over -2a plus 5. And now at this moment, both denominators are exactly the same. And I did it in a bunch of multiple steps. You can do this in one step, but I wanted to show my whole, all my work, because we're learning at this point, and some of you maybe, it's useful to see the middle steps. But now that I have this, I can combine the fractions, common denominator, right? What's -1 times a? -8. What's -1 times -4? +4. And I put brackets around here. Why? Because there was a negative sign here. Whenever you have a negative sign in front of something, always put brackets around the thing that it's in front of, because you need to distribute that negative sign to every single term within that bracket. A lot of students just change the sign for the a, but forget that the negative sign applies to the 4 as well. And then they just mess up the question. So this becomes a plus 1 minus times minus a is just plus a, and minus times plus is -4. That's 2a minus 3 over -2a plus 5, and that's the final answer. We just need to restrict or state our restrictions. And since our variable is not x anymore, it's actually a, you should write a cannot equal. And what can a not equal? Well, let's take a look at the denominator. The denominator is this, -2a plus 5. And that's a bit hard to figure out, but I showed you a trick. -2a plus 5, make it equal to 0. Bring the 5 over. -2a is equal to -5. Divide both sides by -2. A is equal to 5 over 2, meaning a cannot equal 5 over 2. Because that value, 5 over 2, will make this denominator 0. So that is the full answer. There we have it. And yeah, I think we're done. And I'll show you these solutions. You can take a look at that as well. All right, last 5 minutes for questions. Any questions?